of all, I want to say hello to the government if you're listening. Of course they are.
Right on. So when you came to this, you are already identifying as a gay man, and did you find that there were a lot of gay people and trans people within Antifa?
Vast majority.
Vast majority. Interesting. Okay, so I wanted to get that because I didn't understand how old you were, and I wanted to see do you think that they target a younger generation?
Specifically younger generations. I think the older generations had their due. At the beginning, you had a lot of the older Black community members, the older LGBT members. They came in, they said their piece. They lifted up the veil on things happening in our police department, happening with militias who, just the same as us, had extreme members who were getting a little too wily, and they brought attention to that. And, one of the things I noticed is as the riots started to increase, as the violence started to increase, those people left. And all the Black Lives Matter people, the people that were originally there trying to put out a good message, they were replaced by communists. The communist hammer and sickle became more prevalent with every single protest, and the protest became increasingly more violent, which is kind of how communism works, right? Is you're only useful until you're not, and then the bigger fish comes in and eats you.
So let me say this. So BLM, you think, started with a great cause, right? You think the initial point of BLM was really to create awareness around racism and all of that stuff, right?
I want to say yes. I think on the social level, yes. As far as people sitting at home on their phones, going through social media, George Floyd's murder, we keep seeing all these cop videos come in left and right. On the social aspect, there was good intentions, but the more that comes out for the Black Lives Matter organizers and founders, the more I have to wonder what the initial intentions were to begin with.
I think a lot of people feel that way, to be honest with you, which happens sometimes. So now I want to get back. Now I want to get to Antifa. So do you find that BLM and Antifa are very similar in their organizational skills and what they're trying to sort of accomplish on some level?
I feel like that's hard to say. I feel like at times they became intertwined, but there was also times during the protests where you would have more people with the BLM signs, the fists, they had all their attire, all their symbols. And then you would have Antifa come in, and sometimes it would feel like the normal Antifa crowd. Other times it felt very unfamiliar. Where, I don't know, on that one, it's hard to say. They definitely feed off each other.
Sure. Okay, great. So here's another question I want to ask. How about color wise? Did you find that there were more white people involved in this sort of space, or did you find it to be very mixed?
The beginning seemed to be the majority was, maybe not the majority, but a large portion of the people were colored and mixed. And again, over time, as it filtered out, you left more and more white people, and you left the more extreme people of different minority groups who were just borderline criminal, to be frank.
Wow. Okay. So can you explain to me what Antifa, what the organization Antifa is about?
So Antifa, so they like to say, is just an ideology. You can pick it up for yourself and wear it like article of clothing, which is what me and my friends did and everybody else. What it really is it has its history rooted back before World War II, actually. I took some notes on it here.
Okay, great.
So it began as anti-fascist action in 1932 as a paramilitary hand of the German Communist Party. And basically the intention was to overthrow the social liberal democratic governor of the Weimar Republic.
Oh, wow.
So during his rise to power, Hitler basically fed off the fear of communism and off a lot of what was happening in the violence. Hitler was a bad dude, throwing that out there. But he was pointing and being like, look, there's violence over here. Look, there's anarchy. Look, there's this. And as Hitler rose to power, they just became increasingly more communistic, more sympathetic to Russia. But after the war, the ideology was basically absorbed by the political atmosphere of East Germany. And essentially, they wanted to be as far away from Hitler as possible. So to have this group coming in purporting we're anti-fascist, it's just kind of perfect. So eventually they came in, and then East Germany established the Ministry for State Security, which then went on to establish the Stasi, where a lot of these anti-fascist individuals went to work, reporting on civilians, keeping tabs on everything. And after that, in 1961, in East Berlin, they basically erected the Anti-Fascist Defense Barrier, which is what we call the Berlin Wall nowadays.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. So Antifa's comes from like basically the 30s.
Yep.
Oh my God, I actually didn't know that. I don't know if any of my listeners knew that too. So that's quite fast. So now I want to ask, so how did it now get planted in us? And when did you start? So you came from Texas and you moved to Oregon and you moved specifically to Eugene, right? Is that what that Springfield, Eugene area? And then so here's Antifa. Like I never even heard of, I'll be honest with you, Antifa before pretty much all this sort of trans and this kind of radicalization stuff started happening. So you get to Eugene and you're this young guy, and what happened? Like you just started to hang out with these certain group of people?
I was hanging out with definitely people who were politically aligned with me, definitely left, very extreme left.
Okay.
I had years of drug and alcohol abuse.
Okay.
Then, you know, you were doing pills, psychedelics, ketamine, anything you can
Wow.
get your hands on minus meth and heroin.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we're all just kind of losing our minds together. And one of the things I've noticed about Eugene is people tend to move in waves.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess over time, at the beginning, I was the one looking for it. I was the one like, oh, I heard you had a friend in Antifa. What's that about? Can I meet them? Yada, yada, yada. And I just kept digging and digging and digging. And then ultimately the protest popped off. I was like, I'm going to be at every single one that I can possibly be at, because the media is clearly not reporting what's happening correctly on so many of these issues.
Okay.
Simultaneously, you have the cognitive dissonance of the media giving you marching orders. So it's a very confusing place to be in.
Wow, it's so fascinating. And I can see how that could easily, especially if you're in a mood or you're in a thing, and Antifa just seems like, because it is pretty extreme. And so, I can see how it can like pull people in who are angry or disconnected or doing drugs or thinking the whole government here sucks and America's, insane. I could see it all. I mean, I was that young guy back in the day. So it's targeting a very specific group of young people like yourself who are a little bit not so focused maybe and angry and easily influenced. Did you find yourself to be easily sort of swayed to think this way?
Yeah, which is interesting because, when I was younger, I was definitely more rebellious, foaming at the mouth. But then my mom sent me to live with my father when I was 15, and I was basically locked down for 3 years in a psychologically and sometimes physically abusive situation. And when I got out of that, I felt free. And I felt free up until, again, the protests started happening and the social atmosphere and climate starts to change a little bit. And suddenly these friends are becoming my father. They're exhibiting what I think Joshua Slocum would call cluster B personality dynamics, which is definitely something that I saw in my father. And I don't think a lot of them intentionally meant to do it, but they keep you in this place of walking on eggshells to where you can't show anyone a music video. You can't talk about certain news stories, but these are still your friends and they're still really traumatized and you're just coming from different perspectives and you're just still trying to go along with them. And then you wind up going along with them too far until you've gotten yourself into a very messy situation, because ultimately what this all relies on, in my understanding, is weaponized empathy.